There's just 1 minute to showtime.
The engines are on.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
When they wrote up the systems and the rule set that we use, did working people get to write a line? What class of men on pen and paper jotted down their clues? With capital the heart of their design. When 90 million want a thing, but some shareholders say no, which class of people get to have their way? The people read the fine print, say that this thing has got to go, and we'll start writing a new contract here today. Don't you know that hundreds will work and one man keeps the money? They don't think they gotta tell us why. When they say the new social contract, all the bosses will be gobsmacked and everyone will want a sign. Oh, yeah, everyone will want a sign.
Okay. Well, he's got to follow the steps to get us on the screen. All right. Well, thank you again for being with us for another riveting episode of Social Contract, where we go over all the nonsense of the previous week. Again, always big thanks to our own Mr. Jared for our kick-ass theme song. I always love listening to it. It doesn't matter how many times I've heard it. I'm always sitting here jamming to it. You can't see me because I'm off camera when I'm doing it, but I'm doing it. He can see me. He knows that I do it. So hello to our Mr. Mayor Jared as well.
Good morning, good morning. How are things going over in Indiana?
Stupidly, as usual. Well, there's a lot of, if we're going to run down on some of the stupid stuff going on, we can't always fit in everything that we want to talk about. So things get bumped, and sometimes we plan to talk about things, and then we have tech things, and there's all kinds of things that are always happening. But something that did just happen in Indiana is you cannot look at pornography without a driver's license now. So don't look at pornography with your regular VPN, or you're not allowed to do that. So that just happened. And
is there like a censor? Is there like a censor firewall just for the state of Indiana, or are you just like not supposed to? Like, is there enforcement?
I'm assuming there has to be some sort of firewall situation because people just do it anyway.
Like if I VPN myself to Indiana right now, will I not be able to access certain websites?
No pornography. So, I don't know if maybe just certain websites are banned or something like that, or if it's like a dark web situation. So
does it give me a landing page to enter my driver's license information?
Right? Yeah. So, it had been kind of an on-hold thing while they figured out how they could do it legally, and then now they did. So it's been ruled, but that just happened. There's also a big thing that I was looking into talking about, but it's kind of like too big to unpack right now. But it was kind of recently just exposed that Indiana just lets like the cops see shit here, like anything that gets shipped through here. It's a massive shipping hub. They're just like, yeah, we'll take it, and it could be anything that they want. So that's a big story that's sort of coming out too. But a lot of this stuff is getting overshadowed for the DNC going on, which is that's basically what we have to kind of gear towards too, because I can't just sit here and talk about how shit Indiana is for an hour. I could, but I'm not going to. But there is something to take away from that. The big thing is don't forget that Indiana gave you Mike Pence, and a lot of the laws that end up happening, a lot of the red laws, like the no abortions and things like that, just for example, a lot of that shit is already waiting in the wings, ready to go, just for something to happen. And Indiana is a big time bellwether state when it comes to trying out really fucked up legislations and things. So, and they're ready all the time, and it is pretty much aligned with the way that people are here. So Wah wah, as that goes. There's always just like, let's make it a purple state, or let's flip it. Come on, it's all the same shit, and that's what brings us here today. Essentially, is it's all the same shit. I had said I usually do a little promo on TikTok about what we're going to talk about in the show, and I called the parties a duopoly, and then I realized, that's pretty generous to call it a duopoly. It's really a uniparty, because a duopoly implies that there is a binary choice there, like that you can choose one or the other, but it's not. It's all the same. And I think we really have seen that proven in full with the nonsense shit show display that's been going on.
We're
Um,
essentially watching a swapping of the, like, every once in a while the parties will just kind of change sides because
yeah.
the pendulum swings back and forth.
Mhm.
It's easier and easier to make an argument that the Democrats are now technically the more right wing of the two parties, like in terms
Or
of
at least
policy.
equal. That's the thing.
And
Like maybe that's kind of always been the issue. Is like the Republicans are really like in your face about it, but the Democrats are like, haha, BLM, Black Lives Matter, gay rights, all this, and they're the ones that are like Raytheon in the parade with the gay rights flag, right? Like they're and they think they're so fucking righteous. So like Republicans know what they're doing, but Democrats think that they're sneaky, and that's really what it comes down to. And right now, we are in a place where everything is just very, very aligned, where it's
there's
very law and order type of bullshit happening. And
there's no sneakiness at the moment, but people are pretending like I have not watched any of the actual coverage of the DNC, but I've seen it through other people highlighting bits. It's just like the stage with its giant LED wall, and it's like, we respect the law, and it's like, what? Which convention are we at? Like that's this party now? I thought this was supposed to be
yeah.
the, like, not the law and order party.
And we had mentioned before we came on air is, you don't get to hear that part because it's a private conversation. But when we came on air, we were talking about, there's a clip that's going around where it's some protesters did manage to get inside and unfurled a big banner that said stop, funding Israel. And then you see unfolding it, and then like you see someone randomly trying to rip it away, like it's like they're like God given, like they're like having their moment, like God shined a light on them, and it's like, you must rip away this banner. Only you can do it, Steve. So that's really what it comes down to, and it's the same kind of shit that we saw, with the the RNC, different things over the years. It's so reminiscent of. That's why I bring it up. It's so reminiscent of the shit that we were seeing, in 2016 and in 2020, about like how the Republicans were like the most awful, vile monsters that have ever existed, and they were going to 2025 you if just give them the chance. And then like, we're already there. Like the Democrats like crossed the line, like they were the one that brought it to the finish line here, so it's like, really, you get to a point where it's just like, what do we even do? As people on the left, it's like, well, which is really weird, because we had a lot of people recently, that you would respect pretty well, like union, spokespeople, or maybe independent journalists or things like this, who are really like not into Biden. So they were being like, this is horse shit. We need to change all this stuff. Forget this stuff. And it's like Kamala steps into the light. And it's like they all just lost their shit. Like, oh, and it was just like the whole sort of Hillary Trump shit over and over, like this cult of identity shit going on. It's like, all you needed was a more able-bodied Democrat with the exact same policies and the exact same team of people running the show, and that was it. That'll do it. And it's just like, then the liberals are just going crazy. And
Dude,
I think at this point,
I was called by a person I actually know, not just like some random internet encounter, where I was told that I am exhibiting my white privilege by refusing to vote for either of the genocide candidates. So basically, I have now been called racist for not wanting to vote for Kamala Harris. And you can't just say, like, I can't get on the internet and tell people, you've so bought into the nonsense that you are telling me that I am racist because I don't want to vote for a black woman, even though that black woman is like perpetuating like, it's not that I have a problem with her skin color or gender or
that's
ethnicity.
where you draw the line. Give me a fucking break. Come on.
Like, it was when it was an old white guy, they couldn't just stand up there and bold-facedly like go at it like this. But now they have enough whatever identity cover they needed, because what else has changed is exactly what you're saying. What else has actually changed between the two candidates? They're in the same administration. She is the vice president right now under that same guy and has been approving of you. I mean, are they going to tell us that Kamala's been standing there for the last 4 years just like, no, Joe, no, don't do that. Do these things instead. Like, what are they going to... She's been there the entire time, and if your administration, you're the number 2 in the administration, is doing things, you presumably at least partially approve of the things that are happening. Like, otherwise, why are you in the administration? So what actually materially changed between the two candidates? The problem wasn't that Joe was old, as I kept saying over and over again. I know 81-year-olds who can form sentences no problem. It was his policies. And if they're, well, it's not really his policies, he's not in control. Well, whoever the hell is doing the thing, Kamala, it's like, do you think Kamala's going to swap out with an entirely new administration? You think Kirby's going to be out of here? Like the next, they're already bringing up, I'm like just scrolling through things where they're trying to float out, like Anthony Blinken says that Israel maybe, sorta, kinda has thought about a ceasefire, maybe, and we're just supposed to go, yep,
not
good
in
enough for
certain
me.
terms. Don't quote us on this.
Oh yeah, we are moving towards, like, I wish, like, we act all exasperated because the truth is there really is not a big thought process to this. Kamala Harris still does not have a policy page on her website. She can just sell you t-shirts and you can donate to her campaign. So when I ask these rhetorical questions of what policy difference, like what policy are you voting for, like it just isn't there. And what do you get when you make people just... That's going to lose your friends if you just walk up to them knowing they have no actual reason, nothing has actually changed in any way, and the same people who are going to shit all over the place because you went to Starbucks, because we're boycotting Starbucks because Palestine. Now, oh, you don't want free school lunch? Like, that's the kind of response I receive. Oh, you don't want to vote for Kamala? Yeah, she's doing that genocide, but free school lunch. I'm like, don't we already have free school? Sorry, 30,000 Palestinian children. You have to die because school lunch. I was told that I had to vote for that.
Right, yeah. And then, that's exactly it. It's just like, where...
I'm so white, I don't understand, right? Like,
right, and it's like, it feels like when you're watching like a relay race, like with the batons, where they just hand off the baton and they keep running. And it's like whoever wins the race, still both the people that participated still win the race. So it feels like, the Republicans and the Democrats are just handing off the baton, and they're still doing the same authoritative, crazy nonsense that is just like as I said before, it's not in-stage capitalism, because that implies that we are at the end of it and something has to change. Nothing has to change. What this is runaway capitalism, and that is it. Like, we, the reason she hasn't got any policy stuff figured out yet or published yet is because she's not the one doing it. We got to wait for BlackRock to decide what's going to be the policy ultimately, because this is all going to be decided by the corporations that pay for these people. And it bears repeating. I will literally stand on and like tambourine. She's taken $5 million, probably more at this point, from IPAC. So tambourine. Like, people need to realize these things. This is a bought and paid for election. The reason that it wasn't other people, and it was her that stepped right into it, because she was essentially groomed for this. That was all decided ahead of time. Don't forget, a couple elections ago, the Democrats openly said, "Hey, we're going to choose the nominee. That's all that there is to it." And then that's when everybody still had Bernie fever, and he was winning everything like crazy. And Biden was like one of the lowest ranking people that had got in the primary. And he gave this very ominous quote. It was like, they're like, "Well, if you win," and he said, "We're going to win." And it sounded like, oh, what do you know already? You've already been told what's going to happen. So, that's where we are at this stage. So it's like, it feels like I say, like a baton race, because, it seemed like, let's say if we jump back to 2016, it seemed like there was a dichotomy there a little bit. Even though Hillary was horrible and Trump was horrible, it seemed like there was a little bit of a difference to people who weren't really paying attention, myself being one of them for sure. But then it's just like, then it became Biden and Trump, and it's like, these guys are the same. And then now we're on the Kamala and Trump, and it's like, these guys are definitely the same. Like, these are the like 100% same people. There is no daylight between these two things. So it's, and I realize there is going to be a contingency of people who literally the reason they won't vote for Kamala, would be because she was a woman, because she is a person of color, both, Like they will have their preconceived notions, of this kind of thing. Race and gender is going to play into that. But at this point, you got to think that's probably a pretty small margin.
The actual smart, like real racists, like I brought up Nick Fuentes the other week for a reason, like people who are I don't think if anybody actually believe, like if you actually think about it for any amount of time. So I assume it's all grift. You hope it's all grift for that. It's like, well, we say this because it gets money or some kind of rewards out of it. People who actually want to have brown-skinned people disadvantaged are voting for Kamala Harris because she has a large, long track record of putting black people in jail. Like that's the reason we didn't vote for her in the primaries way back in the day. Remember? That's the reason that freaking Tulsi Gabbard was able to get on the debate stage and blow up her whole whole campaign.
Yeah. Well, it's all at least equal, if not more, psycho in her own right. But it's like it's like that onion meme about the worst person makes an excellent point type of a thing, and that's it too. Like we are in this. It's kind of scary to think about whatever's going to come next in the next election down the road, because it's like what nightmare that will be. Because look how quickly, just in like about 3 cycles, how quickly it turned into these guys the same. These guys.
Trump had some policies, and suddenly Biden being not a Republican made everyone okay with those same policies. They continued building the border wall, at least in my state, under the Biden administration, using a bunch of that Build Back Better money and all this other shit. So now they're going to make us okay with Biden's bad policies by changing it over to Kamala. Like, it seems that like it really is just jingle keys, and then use your other hand, jingle the other keys, and that seems to be enough for at least some people. And I'm ready to watch. I do believe that Kamala is going to win. I would be shocked if she did not.
I'm starting to kind of see that myself, because at first I felt like Trump was pretty unbeatable. Like it was a great big comeback and the assassination thing. But that was sort of at the time of the assassination. And I was like, wait, this assassination stuff didn't add up to
nobody
anything.
Cared.
Because I can't believe it. Like, if the president had been shot at before, like, you pretty much had a lock on the presidency, right? Like, you pretty much were there. And it's like, you can't even predict what's going to happen, because it's like what looks like and what you're used to and what you think is going to happen, like, it doesn't. And it kind of felt like, I don't mean the assassination thing, but I think when Trump had the edge on Biden for sure. But then when they switched to Kamala, it wasn't so much that it's like she could have run away with it, like she's so much better than him and more popular and more this or that necessarily. It was really so much more like it felt like it took the wind out of his sails. He really felt like, oh man, I'm fucked. And then like he just like doesn't have the same energy anymore. And he, and we mentioned this before. It's like 2 people who don't want this job are fighting for this job. So that's really what it is, because like I think at this point I think also, I don't want to say like his age is catching up with him or anything, but it's almost like Christmas ghost situation with him. Like it's like, yeah, I'm going to see this through, but also I kind of really don't care, because I'm at a point now where it just really doesn't even matter at this stage. So everybody's going to treat me like shit. I'm at the end of my life. Like there are things I think that he might be thinking about a little bit more, because he just really doesn't seem as determined or as energetically fighting back as he had been before. And I think also there's so much. We're always like the liberals, they're doing the dirty work, because they always are. And it's like, why don't you ever pick on conservatives? It's because like low hanging fruit, right? Like you don't have to. Where they stand on shit. It's
right the same policy. We're criticizing both simultaneously, because there is no difference in policy. There's only difference in how it is packaged and delivered to us.
It's the liberals who are patting themselves on the back about all of this. And I think the worst part of it all is I think that I'm not in the liberal sect, but I think we all, if you're on Facebook, you got family members, it's just like the other way around. If it's the conservatives, like you see what they're talking about, what they're discussing, how they just jumped on this bandwagon, and and that's where I can't figure out. It's like, this is what you just were, what you were completely firmly against the the wars happening and in Ukraine and Palestine. You were completely against that. You hated it when Joe Biden was in charge, but all we needed to do was get a different warm body in place, and now you're all about it. And it's just the way that people have just exploded.
People are screaming at each other for going to McDonald's because they're part of the boycott, and now it's like, Now they scream at you if you won't vote for her. Like, what?
Yeah, and then checking in on the chat, hello to Are You Time Traveler 2, who's one of our big watchers. And they said, yeah, we were pointing out that, everything's still going on. The babies are still in cages. But, and then we'll just come up with a new term for that when she goes running, like when she's in charge of it. The terminology for concentration camp keeps changing.
They've leaned into it now. Now they advertise. They say, we are the tougher party on the border. Vote for Democrats if you want stricter border control. And it's like, this is just entirely flexible, nothing nonsense messaging, because half the things they say they're going to do, like people I've seen, how can you possibly criticize the offering $25,000 for a down payment? If Kamala did that, that would be great for everyone. It's like, my criticism isn't that she's going to do it. My criticism is that she's never going to do that. That's never happening. Like any of the things that the little flimsy promises we have been offered, just the vague, we will stop price gouging, or as she said, price gauging, because she didn't read the script ahead of time and doesn't actually know what the policy that she isn't going to do even is. It's just a vague, like, I will make the prices go down, price controls, and it's like, you really, like...
You're not even in control of that shit. Like, that's
like
companies doing this. I'm
sitting here with my student loans. Joe said he was going to cure cancer before he started running for president. Like, just, is there a single campaign promise that has been delivered on? And why are we've all made the Lucy football jokes since I've been a child.
Right.
How are my peers just apparently falling for it again? Because different lady, not old man, different lady.
And it was so weird to see it happen, like, pretty much, like, immediately. Like, it was like a switch got
2 days.
Yeah, it was like the next moment, like, when they were like, for sure it was going to be her, it's like, they had their shirts. Like, it was that, like, that fast. And it's just like, this is how the Holocaust happened, you guys. Like, literally, like, everybody's like, this is a bad idea. And then suddenly, like, no, wait, actually, this is great. That's how we end up here in these things. And what's really strange is the idea that the whole liberal people who pat themselves on the back for being, pretending to think of other people became so authoritarian, regardless of who's in control of the party. It's the party that, you got to remember also, these people are made up of, like, think tanks and experts and PR people that are gauging and doing polling and figuring out where people's, allegiances and thoughts and ideas lie, juxtaposed against their political, how they define themselves, Democrat, Republican, other. So they are the ones that really found out, this stuff ahead of time, that no, actually Democrats, people who identify as Democrats and liberals, they are expressing these, close down the border, kill all the Palestinians, but, ideals, they're the ones doing this. So, it's really strange to have seen in real time those people shift authoritarianism to what we would have a few years ago called exclusively Republican talking points or right-wing talking points, now seems to be, shared among them. I don't even know how much they're fighting each other anymore. I feel like that, people who have the terminology wrong, like the conservatives who think liberals are leftists and communists and stuff, but they're not. That's something you were going to actually get into, I think, today, about how she's being falsely branded as a communist by the right, because they just don't understand the terminology. They don't know what that means. So it's just buzzwords that they're hearing. So they're not, making the point. But it's like, I don't think there's any real, infighting going on between them anymore, because, a couple cycles ago, it was bloodthirsty, liberal versus conservative, especially like the news loved to, whip that stuff into a frenzy. And at this point, they're so well aligned, it's not much to fight about anymore, unless it's, bad faith arguments.
You have more and more specific and particular social issues that we can fight about. And the thing to keep in mind is that neither group is going to do anything for these various, I don't want to call them just special interest groups, because that sounds too dismissive. But
no, it's like everybody's interest group. Like, that's the thing. Like, who doesn't want to be, like, companies not to be allowed to inflate prices? Who doesn't want to? Who's like, oh, we shouldn't be allowed to afford homes? You
The
know,
only
like
policies they've mentioned, they are the same on like the what is it? No tax on tips. It's like Trump came out with that a few months ago, and then they're like, us too, I guess. Like,
right, yeah.
which I don't know how they would. People have already pointed out. It's like, well, they're just gonna random businesses are just gonna start classifying all kinds of various income as quote tips, and I'm like, yeah, they probably will, but at the same time, it's like the absolute least you could do for people who are who have a whole separate different hourly wage they're allowed to be paid
Right.
that is much lower. So like that's another thing where yeah, who thinks yeah, f waiters and waitresses they should have to pay $1 million in tax? Like everyone
Right.
basically agrees on those things,
And
and
that
I
affects a
don't think they're going to
gigantic,
happen anyway.
well, it affects a gigantic swath of the population. That there are so many people that work in service that are already, as you said, at a complete disadvantage because they're literally allowed to be like earn like $2.50 an hour because of they get, tips. That's supposed to be the idea. So, and then you have to contend with people, the businesses not giving out their tips if they get it, paid on a credit card or something and not in cash. And so there's all kinds of, just a mess on that. It's like, and that's just like one micro issue. The protests right now in the DNC are really focused on, what we're the language has improved, and we're now calling it an arms embargo to
Arms
Israel,
embargo.
which will not happen. That let's not forget, a few months ago, it was very publicly and very like pridefully said by the Democrats that Joe Biden literally threw open the doors to our weapons cache and said, "Take what you need, buds, and do what you got to do." And so like they're that's not going to stop. Like, and if it does, they'll just figure out another way to do it quietly or more privately, or which may be that's something they're figuring out now. Because even though we're where we're at and we're talking about stuff that's happening in the present, because we can really only talk about what we know for sure and then speculate about what's going to happen down the road. Like those people are already working on down the road. So even though it seems like they're going to do the obvious stupid thing, and it's like, oh yeah, well they're dumb anyways. Yeah, they're working on the futures of things, and that's what the whole greater Israel issue we've been talking about on and off about. If Israel is able to conquer Palestine, it doesn't stop at those borders. This is the stronghold that we are propping up so that we can have ultimate control and power of the Middle East region. In the faces most specifically Iran. So that's not something that's just going to like happen and we're like, oh yeah, okay, all right, we go along with it. So there will be no arms embargo. They might try and act like they're going to do something to that degree, but if so, that means they've already figured out another method to get those arms and get those supplies to try to finish the job. And that's where that stands. So it's a valiant effort. It's a good effort, and I'm really glad that there are protests happening. And I think a lot of right-wing people and a lot of, especially the cops that are there, are trying to get it to go into the 1968 Democratic Convention situation. Like they're trying to make something happen of it. And the protesters so far have been very peaceful. May or may not, we'll see about that, because we know with a lot of the George Floyd protests, it was a lot of cops that were, sitting out piles of bricks and busting out windows and saying, oh, it's outside agitators. They were the outside agitators. They're the ones doing it. So, roughing people up and trying to start shit. We know that. I'm not breaking the news here when I say that. We have seen it happen just a couple of years ago. So I feel like at the end of this, we might be seeing something similar. Whether or not they are aware of this as a group, the protesters, and decide to either take the bait or not take the bait, or if they really feel like they need to go that extra step. And I feel like I'm not necessarily against violent protest if it's going to move the needle. But when we had violent protests with George Floyd, what it resulted in was cop cities all over the country. So I feel like we're like on, the people protesting, even if you're not there, are at a major disadvantage, because if you do what they want, you play into their hands, they're just waiting to be able to do something to make things more authoritative. And at this point, I think we're supposed to. People would look at us and like, you got to show. You should have all the answers, but we don't. That is the problem. Like, it's hard to tell where this is going to go or what should be done next. because everything, like, it's like they can keep cutting us. If you've got a military that you're willing to turn on your own people, you get cut off at the pass every single time. So
At this stage, I don't even know if I think loud, rowdy protests would probably look, if anything, look bad for the DNC because they're trying to project this thing of like unity. We're the we're the nice people. You know, get on the cool side of the election. We have this hip young 60-year-old woman that we're
well,
gonna
also
get
that's
out
what
there.
Biden said when they shot him full of Adderall and sent him out there. He said that in his speech that the protesters have a point. People are dying on both sides. And it's like, give me a fucking break, dude. Like but they thought by having him acknowledge the protesters that would make it seem like they were acknowledging them, and that and that would be enough, and that is not enough, obviously.
I don't like doing the crowd measuring thing because that always just becomes like it's like an unwinnable situation of you have a photo, they have a photo. Look, there's a lot of people. No, there's actually not a lot of people, but you've got to be. There's no way that you are getting into that building if they even kind of think that you're going to do a Palestine protest.
Right.
Like the fact that we have seen, I saw one person run on and start grabbing like, oh, Palestine, and then they get dragged off immediately, and it's like, all right, good shot. At least you bothered people for a second there.
Right.
Like, I don't know if you can get anywhere near that stage. And if they wanted, like, if the plan was like, oh, let's really make the, like, I don't know what it would accomplish for like big loud rowdy protests to happen. Like that's the reason they have this very large security barrier I keep hearing about. Because a month ago it seemed like there would have been just enormous protests, but since the Kamala switch, that seems to have calmed down. Maybe now that universities are coming back into session, maybe we'll see all that just ramp right back up. Maybe Columbia is just going to go crazy again. But I kind of predict that it will not, and even if it does, I just don't think we're going to hear about it because that's not what, like, they want. I say the permanent bureaucracy wants Kamala to win. It seems pretty clear at this point. So I don't, like, you're talking about how quickly people just got on board with her. I think that is at least partially to do with the extreme media blitz that we had around her, where she was immediately and is still kind of portrayed as this, not superwoman, but like you don't hear about any qualms with her anymore, except ironically when she briefly was like, oh yeah, price controls. The Washington Post was still like, how did shut up, don't you dare. And it's like, well, I thought the other guy was literally Hitler, so which is worse, literally Hitler or price controls?
Right, and that narrative of like where it was like 99% Hitler, which would referring to Joe Biden, that's kind of gone out the window. It's as if she's some sort of completely different person of a completely different party, and what's fucked up about it is that, like, well, lots of things are, but what's especially fucked up about it is like she's got no policies. So everything that people want to, like, they're projecting this onto her. They're projecting these things.
And they just want to allow that. Just don't touch her. Allow everyone to think whatever they want.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's why they're stalling on policy. I mean, I was being kind of smart-assed about BlackRock not writing her policy yet. That is true. They will. I mean, like, the companies, the corporations will decide what they are going to allow, and then she will agree to do it. That's just how business is done now in Reagan's America. But at the same time, I think they're going with this ambiguity on purpose for the fact that they can let people make up in their own minds. And I think this might be the scariest part. People are making things up. People are attributing things to her. And you especially see this in the liberal sect when you go, I mean, I swear, go over to Facebook and look at all your liberal relatives and all the old people, like they are, and not even just old people, but I think, mostly, but they have just decided in their mind that that she's, for all the, she's going to end homelessness, and she's going to bring the rents down, and she's going to end food deserts, and she's going to, give free lunches, and there's going to be college for everybody. Like, who said any of this? Like, not them. They didn't say any of this shit. Like, none of this stuff's going to happen. And everybody, on that side is now suspiciously quiet about, the Israeli invasion. So, like, and I knew that was coming, honestly. Like, I didn't know exactly when or how or what shape it would take, but I knew people would not necessarily lose interest, but a lot of people who are pretending to be interested would just be like, as soon as you gave them an alternative, they would drop it. And that's exactly what's happened. And that's why it always feels like on the left, it's just like you're constantly like, Like you
You have
got
to
no
like
leg to stand
reset.
on.
Like you got to reset every bit of like it seemed like people were starting to understand. It's like, no, man, it's basically just this. There is the one owning class, and what they want is going to happen. This pure permanent bureaucracy is in control. They already have decided the real policies. They just haven't decided how they're going to package it and like try to convince us to be okay with it. And then, yeah, they swap over to a different person, and it all goes out the window. And it's like, no, no, no. She is but a humble farmer who wishes to improve our lives. And
Exactly. No,
she
trust
only
her. Trust in her. And it's like, are you people fucking crazy? Like she didn't know. They are not saying that they will do any of these things. And I think a lot of Wall's, reputation of the bills that he's passed, which, in fairness, a lot of them are good. I mean, maybe if you dig into them, they're not, because we've talked about the kind of free lunch scenario before, and about how you pointed out that, okay, that, yeah, it's free lunch, but that does mean that they struck a deal with a company who's going to be the sole supplier of the lunches now. So, that's not exactly as clean cut as it looks, right? So, you might be able to dig into those things and find some stuff out a little bit
I
more.
think
But
it sucks that we went from Medicare for all being like the demand, and then okay, how about public option? And now it's you want a school lunch, maybe if you qualify in your district and fill out the correct paperwork.
yeah.
And we're like, yeah, let's go. Like,
Yeah,
people
and then they're
seem
actually like, "Oh,
genuinely
well, that's the
excited.
precedent. Then that's the precedent." And then here's the thing that's so fucking weird is that, like, um, you know, a few weeks ago, Trump said, about the vice president doesn't matter, and he was right about that. And I hate when I have to agree with him on something. The vice president really doesn't matter. They don't make any policy decisions. They don't do anything. They just do photo ops and are seen having pictures of them walking places. Like they don't do anything, except just kind of electioneer and wait in case the president dies. So in essence, he was correct about that. So when we knew that we know that for a fact because like, oh, what great big policies or big deals did she do in the 4 years she's been VP? None, because that's not the role. So everybody is supposed to lose their shit when she says Tim Walz is going to be my VP. So what? Are you going to give him magical powers like that? What is it? Do they matter? They don't matter. So people are they just fall for anything. They're just so willing to go anywhere that they're told to go.
Tim Walz also big Zionist, like loves
No
Israel,
kidding.
does
Like
photo ops, takes
specifically, like they have a specific, Israeli partnership of like business and friendship and things like that. So I mean, that's another big thing and another reason why there's not going to be an arms embargo. I like the idea, I like the enthusiasm behind it, but we're also saying, we have been as leftists, as the protesters, they, like I said, they've got these strategists in these, these bean counters and things of people who figure this stuff out way ahead of time. And they're already betting on, both parties are already betting on just completely counting out anybody who's not going to vote, who doesn't like either candidate, who identifies as left, who identifies as communist socialist.
It's about who can turn out people because no one's
Right.
like we talk about every week. Nobody's mind actually changes. Like I don't
Right.
know if nobody who was gonna vote for Trump is now like, oh, you know what, Kamala Harris.
Right. Except that they are, but that's where you get the authoritative leaning, is they want to try to steal people away from the, they decided that the better steal is going to be conservatives rather than leftists. They just left us off and said, you know what, you're a small enough group of people that you're just outside agitators, you're assholes, and we don't care what you do. So don't even bother. Or anybody who wouldn't necessarily vote for her for, stupid reasons like being a woman or a person of color. So they wrote those people off. And they said, but what we really could probably do is if we adopt these really horrible policies, we, like the strong on the border and we're going to support Israel every step of the way and do all these really horrible things right in their faces, that we could pull over a lot of those conservatives. And I haven't seen any real numbers on that, but I have a feeling that, they're probably, there were a lot of people who were conservatives, who were Reds, who didn't support Trump, didn't like Trump, didn't want Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Never Trump Republicans. That's not something, we just like hocus pocus here. That was a big movement for, a long time, was the never Trump Republicans. Okay, so if a never Trump Republican is presented with an opportunity to vote for a Trump-like person that upholds their values but isn't Trump, like we're meeting in the middle here, and I think that was the bigger bet with them. That's what they're thinking, that they can go off of more, and that's why things have gotten so awful so fast. And but the real issue is seeing these liberal people go along with it, who all along were, against what Joe Biden was doing because he was aligned in that same group of people, that same demographic, and that same idea. And because they'd have been like, these are the ideas of an old rich white man who's been in politics his whole life and wrote the crime bill and done all these awful things. But then they're acting as if she comes in there with a clean slate and is going to do all these things that she believes that they believe she's going to do, and they put this upon her. And there's been no decision, no discussion about any of that kind of stuff. So they're kind of hedging their bet a little bit about coming out firm on policy, except for the fact that they did straight up say, we're going to support Israel no matter what, in any possible way that has to be done. And they're still pushing, the October 7th narrative and the Hamas sex crime stuff. And when we know very, very well at this point, it is extremely the opposite. So they're going to continue to do that and continue to bank on people not bothering to do their own research and just doing what they're told. So that's essentially where we are in all of this. And it's scary to see people fall in line so fast with such bad policy, and policy that is essentially non-existent.
The only fights I see, the arguments I'm looking at are like, what did we have? We had Tim Waltz talking about like seasoning his tacos, and then that became a like white people spicy food. What do we have? Like trans people at the Olympics to fight about. There's no hard policy, anything to talk about, because the two biggest issues on voters' minds, it seems, if you believe polls, are the border and inflation. And they both agree on the border, and they both are going to do the same thing for inflation, which is basically nothing. Like, you can have the Fed raise your interest rates, etc. But, like, to really deal with that, you essentially have to, like we bailed out the banks last time we had a big financial crisis, you now kind of have to bail out the American people, and nobody's going to do that. So we have no difference on the two things people actually supposedly are voting on. If you had the Trump campaign actually focus in on those two issues, they would win easily, but they can't because they are too easily baited into culture war nonsense. Instead, we got to call Kamala Harris a literal communist, and we got to like, oh, is she really black? Like all these weird things that we're gonna fight about, which turn people off. Like nobody sees Trump going like Kamala is or isn't black, and is like, now I'm definitely voting for him. Like that it doesn't. It's not a good place to be. Not even because racism. Just because it's like, who does that? It doesn't win any points with anyone, and you can only lose points and just further feed into the whole which candidate aesthetically is nicer to vote for, seeing as their policies are identical.
Right.
Trump is losing and will continue to lose the aesthetic battle, and if he wants to keep it about, oh, do you like mayonnaise or whatever the hell, how are you going to go anywhere? That's not why people voted for him. People didn't vote for him in 2016 because he was calling Hillary an ultra-communist. That's what she did with him. Russia, he's a secret Russian. And then she lost. Then he's going to go, communism, she's a secret communist. And then he's going to lose, is my prediction.
Yeah, it's also, we kind of mentioned this, the buzzwords. People don't actually have to understand what communism is or how that it would benefit them as a, somebody who's an unemployed person who is barely getting by to begin with and can't afford food. If you just would stop it with your nonsense and you're, doing what you're told and realize that this is something that could help you in the long run. But it's just,
all the morons I know that stick a frickin' hammer sickle on their profile, including me, not including me, because they're all ready to vote for Kamala. So it's basically like the one side of this same uniparty coin was like, you guys are all evil communists, and then all the internet communists are like, yeah, we love Harris.
Right? Yeah, that's where I feel like I just kind of sitting here I don't know, I feel like my life is a meme, and a lot of you're just sitting here I can't fucking believe what's going on here, because it's exactly what happened. The people who have branded themselves communists or leftists or socialists were immediately fell in line. And we always knew that there were liberals who were doing that, who thought it was cool to brand themselves as leftists, whatever. So we knew that there was a contingency of
The
of
ultimate
research.
test. Will you
But
read a single book?
right, but
Seriously, the number of people I know who refuse to read anything. Some of these things are pamphlets that are 50 or fewer pages long, not even asking for like 300, 500 page. You don't have to read Capital, all 3 volumes. Read anything. And they will
right,
not. They're like, I've been called ableist for saying that people should study something. And they're like, well, what about people who can't read? I'm like, well, get a book on tape. There's many, many solutions here.
right, yeah. It's like they're always going to come up with something, and that's the case. Like maybe okay, so maybe you don't want to do your own research, like. Just work on finding some other points of view to see if the people who you listen to all the time are correct or are saying the right thing all the time. Like it's people are just so unwilling to take any responsibility to learn, that there are other things going on out there. And if you're just hearing the same buzzwords getting hammered at you over and over again, it might be a good time to really try to understand what that means.
Everybody got 13-ish years, depending on if you went to college or not, possibly more, 13-ish years of insistent education on our system and how our system is good, how there is no possible other solution,
Right.
the ins and outs of it, all the justifications for, well, if you don't like a thing, we have a representative democracy, and like XYZ. Like, we have social studies classes. You are indoctrinated into this system basically from the time where you're learning how to form words and sentences. And if you think that you're just, oh no, I've just simply snapped out of that because I'm a magic genius and I just brained my way right out of it. Like, you might have to actually do some study in the other direction to balance out your own freaking brain. You are not immune to propaganda.
Right. None of us are. And it's like, of course, you look at like us sitting here, like, of course we'd love to have a reason to jump on this bandwagon too. Like, it was like, oh, all of our problems are solved. That's
Way
not
more
how it
comfortable.
works.
I'd
You've
love
got
to pretend.
Yeah, right. We have to look at other alternatives. Like we have to be the alternative voice, and other people like us who are probably much smarter and more informed have to be
It
like
becomes
us.
exasperating because people who are supposed to be smarter, like academic Marxists, don't effing get it. Like, they don't understand. Like, I don't
Right.
understand how you can spend that much time. That's the thing. Just reading the book isn't even like aha, I've now fixed my brain because I read the thing. Some people spend years studying it and come with completely wrong conclusions out of it. It's like, well, that just, like Mark said, we got to go vote for Kamala.
He predicted this.
They'll
It's
take
absolutely
quotes
true.
where they'll talk about how, like, Lenin and both of them say, like, no, you need to participate in bourgeois elections to show the power of your party and to, like, highlight the contradictions. But what they're importantly saying is you need to run your own candidates, not you must
Right.
choose one of the bourgeois parties and
Right.
support them. Like, that has never been a thing said. So I guess technically go vote for Claudia de la Cruz, but we can argue over her. Oh yeah, did you hear the Jill Stein vice presidential possibility? This does not help my opinion that the Green Party as an organization essentially exists to kneecap leftist movements and may or may not be a CIA op. I don't think Jill Stein is. I don't think the individual members are. But when you hear shit like this, the VP candidate, potential person who was going to run with Jill, there was apparently they were trying to do a thing where they're like, all right, we're going to make a deal with the Democrats where if they get arms embargo, if they get an arms embargo done, we will drop out and we will remove ourselves from the ballots. And people are pointing out, well, first of all, you can't just remove yourself from the ballots. Like, you could tell people to not vote for you, but like, you're already on those ballots. You already filled out the paperwork. And like, they aren't in various states, which is another problem I have with the Green Party. Like, they aren't in New York. You can't vote for Jill Stein if you're a New Yorker. Sorry. They didn't get their shit together and get enough signatures. And I know it sucks, but I know far like lesser funded candidates who managed to get that done in New York. So if you're really trying to be this third party who's going to fucking change the world, maybe you should get your shit together. But yeah, we had that whole clown show where the vice VP candidate potential was like, yeah, we'll do a deal with the Dems, and I promise that me and Jill will drop out if you do an arms embargo. And then,
But it was somebody who wasn't chosen anyways. I didn't see the full story on that. I know what you're talking about.
She's like, they won't do that, so I'm out. I'm not going to be the vice
Yeah,
president.
it was up to you the whole time.
It's like we're relatively close, and the fact that they're still fighting over who's going to be the VP candidate with Jill Stein is like, you guys either don't have your stuff together because you're just through circumstance, or you're like trying to look incompetent because that's what it looks like to me. Even though every green voter I know is a very nice person, their hearts are in the right place. They aren't trying to like intentionally sabotage and bog down any potential third party candidate. But you just like look at the sequence of events over the last 2 years, and you're like, man, if you were trying to look like an idiot, this is about what you would do. You would have taken this
Making
series
it
of
look
decisions.
bad, yeah.
Remember
Yeah.
they freaking Cornel West? Remember when we were all going to vote for Cornel West for president? He was going to fix everything, and then he turned out to be a piece
remember
of
that's
shit.
what I said. Oh, yeah, we were talking about that at the beginning, where it's like, where he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna do it," and I'm like, "You're full of shit. You just got some debt you want paid off, you jerk. Like, you are not gonna do anything."
I don't know what they have on him or his family. I don't know if it actually
Well,
is
he
the
was in a
child
lot of
support
debt.
thing.
I
Is it-
guessed it, and then it turned out to be true. He was like $3 million in debt, and he isn't anymore, apparently. So, so there goes that. And I personally, I don't dislike Jill Stein, and I think honestly, if she had an honest shot, I think her and her policies.
I still might vote for her just because, like, I'd love to throw it into that like 5% she's trying to get. If they get to 7, I think they get money.
Right, and that's the thing. Like but she's been fought pretty much tooth and nail in every state by the Democrats who have done to keep her off the ballot. The Republicans
And their own party
don't
who
even care. But actually, again, remember at the top of the hour, I mentioned that Indiana is a bellwether state for a lot of the way that the national politics end up going. I can't remember exactly. I think it might be 2016 now, but there was a Indiana made it impossible for third party candidates to be on the ballot anymore. Because
at all.
Yeah, like at all. Because some libertarian chode pulled off like 11% of the vote, and they were like, wait a minute. And libertarians are to Republicans as green is to Democrat. Like that is.
I think they are purposefully dumb because they like, God forbid something actually happened. Nothing can ever happen. So you have to keep where the libertarians elected a candidate. Like there were basically 2 factions of the Libertarian Party: the ones that kind of make a little bit of sense, and the kinds that are just the wackier ones. And guess who they're running as their candidate?
Right. And I don't inherently disagree with her. To conclude my point here, and I think she could make a good candidate if she really did have an honest chance. And I have, I agree with her platform in a lot of ways, and she's coherent, and that matters quite a bit now, a lot more than you would ever think that it needed to.
Listen to her talk; she sounds great.
Coherence turned into a really big factor in all of this, which is literally like the bar is so low it's underground at that point. When it's like literally, can you string a sentence together? You can. Hired.
I used to make fun of Jill Stein. I'd be like, "Oh, the crystals," and then it's like, "Oh, that was like thrown at me to make sure I still just voted for the Democrats." I understand. Right. Thanks, John Oliver. Good job with your propaganda. I hope you got your check.
Yeah, exactly. Like with the corporate news, and that's I think a lot of the problem too is that like he'll come out and like specifically him. Well, there is a feature called, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it is actually like a term now where, but I don't remember exactly how it's worded, but it is like a political factor where like it's called like the John Oliver effect. And that's like a real thing. I'm not sure if I'm wording it exactly right, but it is a real thing where, people flock to him so much that he really has this like exorbitant amount of influence that you really wouldn't think that just like a single commentator could have. He kind of stepped into that. I know we have Jon Stewart still, but he kind of stepped into that Jon Stewart role because back, a few years ago, people listened to what Jon Stewart said.
I did. He was my political awakening. He's what pushed me on this whole thing to begin with.
No one cared that it was corporate news. No one cared that it was liberal leaning, except for maybe,
It was Comedy Central back when our institution still had some kind of support and people did still kind of watch the normal news. Now freaking nobody watches corporate news. It's like a less than 1 million viewers a day across like all 3 of them.
Right.
It's like
right.
Nobody.
So with John Oliver in particular, like he seems so radical in his writing team. They seem so radical and so on top of shit. And it's like the thing you can't get across to people is like, yes, they are taking some issues head on. And some of those issues are important, ecological issues or financial grifting that's going on. Yes, of course. But those are allowed topics. Those are approved topics by the corporation who they are employed to, that are allowing them to discuss those topics because they are of no consequence to the parent company. I'm not sure if it's Universal that owns or HBO or whoever owns it. It doesn't really matter. Point is is they're all the same people. There's only a few of them, and they are, if they say as a company we are supporting Kamala Harris every possible way, then they are. And then he comes out on his show and says, "You can't vote for her. This is the reason why she's horrible. Here's all this, that, and the other thing." They're only going to allow that up to a certain point. They might let them talk about what's already on record, like her, cop stuff that she had done, to seem deferential a little bit. But they're not going to let him sit there and rail against her. It's always going to be an aura of, like, let's even though let's talk about Israel being creeps and jerks, let's still make sure though that we have to let the people know that they need to support Israel even though they're not perfect. It's always going to be something to that degree. It's always going to serve the corporations. It's always going to serve the masters. The paychecks are trickling downward. That's the only trickle down that there is where you get paid from the top to the bottom. And although he is influential enough, he's essentially this new Jon Stewart, although he is influential enough to move the needle on certain things, and yes, has some educational value on things that aren't necessarily something that people would necessarily be aware of, and some of the smaller stories, not necessarily like election related type of things. It's not. It's just circling the drain essentially. Like, yes, good for educational purposes in some ways, not so much in others.
John is also entirely full of shit on occasion. Like, he did a story on a thing called Tony's Chocolonely, talking about how, this brand, Tony's, is a specific anti-slavery chocolate brand that uses only ethically sourced chocolate, the kind that does not actually use slave labor. And if you go to Tony's Chocolonely website, that's what their whole website is about, is talking about how they're the ethical chocolate. This guy, Tony, was like, this is nonsense. Everyone uses slave labor. I'm going to do a whole new chocolate brand. Yeah, guess what? They also use slave labor anyway, but you would never know that from listening to the John Oliver report about it.
Right. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, you could trust their chocolate brand to not use slave labor if you want to pay $2 million for a chocolate bar.
Well, that's the thing. It isn't even the thing they say it is. That's just how they try to justify that price. You're supposed to feel good about spending the $5 on the chocolate bar because it doesn't use slave labor. And, hey, as my favorite person to frickin' reference, Peter Coffin, good communist, pointed out, ironically, the Mr. Beast chocolate bar does not use slave labor. It's not in the supply chain that uses it. Meanwhile, Tony's is, and if you dig on their website and actually read the whole dang thing, Tony's even acknowledges this. It's like, we're doing our best to try and remove, and it's like, just stop doing it. Just get it from a different supplier.
Yeah.
You don't have to try. It's possible because other people are already doing it. And I'm the last person who's going to run around and be like, ethical consumption. You need to consume ethically. Like, it's basically impossible. The fact that, how many people even know that, like, yeah, if you're eating chocolate, there's a 99% chance that chocolate at some point touched the hands of a slave. Like,
right. Yeah. Yeah,
as if us buying different chocolate would change it in the first place. Just the fact that you can take a company that charges too much for chocolate based on we're an ethical brand, and then you have a guy who has a TV show based on I'm an ethical guy who can just get on there and essentially lie about it. Like, I haven't looked into, are they the same parent company? Does someone have some holding in XY chocolate brand? Did John Oliver's team really just not read the entire Tony Chocolonely website? Because, like I said, the website itself will tell you that they do technically still use slave labor. So, like, how did that happen? And then once you start examining that, you stop watching the news. You just stop. You're like, everyone's full of shit.
Right, yeah. It's like, you can't, we can't sit here and act like Jared and myself are like some sort of freedom fighters who never touch chocolate. We don't use a phone.
I eat chocolate.
Or a computer. We can't live. It's not possible to live in that society.
I shop at Walmart. I use the same brands everybody. Well, I use generic everything because I'm too cheap. But like,
well,
I'm talking into a microphone right now that was definitely produced by. I'm sure there was something effed up going along the way.
Probably a child dug the cobalt that's in my phone right now. Like, we can't, like, obviously we don't want that. That's not the society that we want to live in. That doesn't mean we get to talk about it all the time, and that we're super informed about it, or that we know the goings on there. No, because we also rely on people to be there to tell us those things, and sometimes there are.
Kamala Harris is going to fix all of that through her vague non-policies that we are not allowed to know about yet because we're too dumb to even process them. But
right.
you see, a week in, all this will be fixed. All the slave chocolate will be gone. All American jobs are coming back. Your rent's going to be $4 a year. It's incredible.
Yeah, and then, like, you have a lot of, people in running the interference. It's not helping that right now we're in a place where unions are really kind of revving back into the public interest and really coming back around. And then you have these assholes that come and support her and be like, she's so pro-union. Name a pro-union thing she's ever done.
She stood there while Biden blew up the railroad worker strike. She was in the back the whole time. No, Joe, don't do that. Support the railroad workers.
Yeah. Famously saying, don't do it. No, I'm pretty sure that never fucking happened. She was too busy being photographed walking places. So
I think she was at the border around that time. They sent her
right?
out.
Like, so, and that's the thing. Like, okay, so it's like you want to rewrite her history. Okay, fine, but you can't rewrite what's going to happen. Going forward. With using the same people, the same policy writers, the same surrounding team. She's not going to go through there hiring all new people and clean house, drain the swamp. That's just not going to happen. It's not. And that's why they haven't said they're going to do that. That's why there's not been any policy mentions of anything, because they're just allowing people to believe whatever they want to believe, and listen to whoever they want to listen to. And they're betting on, if they take this authoritarian route, that they're going to draw more people away from Trump who would vote for Trump if they liked Trump, but they just hate Trump. The people in the middle, primarily white women, and affluent white women, let's be clear. Not poors, but even some, but that's another thing that's really astonishing. The poor people who just think that they're, going to become billionaires or something like that. That's like that. They have that opportunity, and then they're like, you are not a capitalist. You are, a wage slave who is, a fanboy for capitalism. That's not the same thing. You own no capital. Like, you can't be a capitalist if you own no capital. So, and you can't compete on the capitalistic stage with anyone. So, that's another whole can of worms there.
I anticipate that we will see Kamala win with a large percentage of the Caucasian vote, and I predict we will see Trump lose with an increased percentage from the last election of non-white voters. I think that like more black people than ever are going to vote for Trump. I think more Hispanic people than ever are going to vote for Trump also. And then, I don't know, man, we got 4 years of like, I really hope she does whatever you think she's going to do. I hope all your wildest dreams come true. But when they don't, and we're sitting right back here in 2028, I'm ready for no lessons to be learned. We've proven that nothing. Right? They're just going to be like, well, vote again.
About whoever the next person is, right? And I think also she does actually have the edge of being female. And normally I would say that doesn't play into it or wouldn't really matter or would be working against her, except that I feel like there's so many, especially white women in this country and white liberal males who are like, it's time. Like, and it's just like, oh Christ, that's not got anything to do with it. Well, qualifications, you assholes.
They made you feel,
it doesn't matter. Like Lady Hitler, just because she's a lady, that doesn't change things.
It's easy to feel good about voting for her. Like, she feels like an underdog for no reason at all. Like,
right? Yeah, and it's like, I don't want to hear that argument. Like, I would vote for any woman at any point who I felt like was, qualified to do the job. Like I said, I do like Jill Stein. She doesn't have a chance in hell, but I do like her. And if there were,
she's the actual best candidate of the three. Like, if you just had to,
and if there were some way that she could like legitimately, stand up next to these people and they debate her and they get to know her, just like, if she took on that Bernie role where people actually got to know her and get behind her and things like this, then like it had a real legitimate chance, then I would probably be more open and ready to throw support behind her. As it is now, it's just pointless to do so.
I believe she's in a clown organization that even if she got anywhere near potentially grabbing power, much like Bernie Sanders, I don't know if she would do it. I don't know if her organization would has the structure to allow her to do it. I think that is one of those orgs, just like I love that you said that it's the libertarians for people who have traditionally liked the right wing, and it's the Greens for people who have traditionally liked the left wing, where it's I'm mad with the mainstream uniparty, so I'm gonna go over here, but then eventually it just circles you right back into one of those two mainstream parties again. because you're going to go, oh, since I believe so hard in electoralism, I better vote for the person I think I'm going to win, and one of them is literally Hitler, and depending on who you are, that could be either. The right thinks Kamala is literally Stalin, I guess, which
Yeah, right?
I hate saying that shit because I'm going to get myself on a Stalin rant, and then we think Trump is literally Hitler. So why would they have to have any kind of campaign? No one's going to change their minds. It's, do you want Hitler or not? Come out and vote. And so many people real people, not just 90-year-olds who watch MSNBC all day, people my age and younger who that's their only response. They just stare at you shocked. Like, what do you mean you're not going to vote for Kamala Harris?
Right.
Trump is literally Hitler. He's out there killing trans kids in the street.
Right? Like, yeah, exactly.
And my point is, if you are under the poverty line, it doesn't matter who is president. Neither of them are doing shit for you.
No.
Kamala
So
might very slightly improve your life if you are a gay trans CEO.
Yeah.
If you aren't, your life is going to be the same. If you're poor, like me and all my gay friends, your life is identical. Nothing is going to change.
Your life will not improve. It will likely get harder because I would challenge people to look back to 2012, 08, 2012, 2016, anything kind of pre-COVID. You all know your lives were better than they have been over the past.
If you want to be freaking empirical about it, like if you just want to write down numbers, I had a better time during the Trump years than during the Biden years.
That's true too. I did too.
Because eggs were $1 still.
Yes. And that was the reason why. I mean, you could even back it up to that far. And I'm not saying it's because of him and what he had done.
No.
But I can tell you that carrying on how we have carried on, and the Democrats acting like that they were going to fix everything, that Trump fucked everything up and they were going to fix it, and then they made everything 1,000% worse, especially with the I don't want to say the word so that we don't get flagged, but the C illness. How badly that's been all handled, and people are constantly getting sick and debilitated, and that's not stopping and not going to go away. And how badly all that was handled, and how no resources were allocated. I got a lot more resources in the Trump era than I did. There were none in the Biden era. They wouldn't even give you masks for free, except for a couple of months up front. And they were
Trump gave me extra
around the fucking millions by the millions in warehouses just sitting, and they could just be handing those out, but it's political fodder for some reason. So that, but at the end of the day, whoever is going to lose. If Trump loses, then the libertarians are going to get blamed for the loss. If Kamala loses, then the Greens and the left are going to get blamed for the loss. We're just scapegoats essentially on the outside of things, but not taken seriously in any particular way. But when I'll check the chat here one more time. Yes, okay. Oh yeah. Everybody. We have a mention of the top cop, but everybody's like, oh, she has cool shoes. So it's
I didn't hear about the shoes. That's funny.
Right? It's like, God damn it! Oh, her shoe. Oh, God. So yeah, and that, but we're about the time in the hour when Jared starts picking. He's like, all right, shut it. Time for you to stop talking. So yeah, we I think we at least. I don't know if we've made any convinced anybody that wasn't already convinced of whatever, but I feel like we at least got to spend the hour getting stuff off of our chest that's been horrible to live with. So thank you for sitting with us for our rant this week. And we will be back for another one of some kind, and hopefully be able to have a minute to fold in some other topics. But I am going to say adieu and turn you over to our very capable musician who's going to play you a lovely song. So bye, everybody. Stay safe.
Get a load of that transition. That was seamless.
I've been thinking lately about the people that I meet, the car wash on the corner and the hole in the street, the way my ankles hurt with the shoes on my feet, and I'm wondering if I'm gonna see tomorrow. Father, forgive us for what we must do. You forgive us and we'll forgive you. We'll all forgive each other till we both turn blue. Then we'll whistle and go fishing in a heaven. I was in the army, but I never dug a trench. Used to bust my knuckles on a monkey wrench. I go to town and drink, give the girls a pinch, but I don't think they ever really noticed me. Father, forgive us for what we must do. You forgive us and we'll forgive you. We'll all forgive each other till we both turn blue. We'll whistle and go fishing in a heaven. Fish and a whistle and a fish. Eat everything that they put on your dish. And when we get through, we'll make a big wish that we'll never have to do this again. Again. On my very first job, I said thank you and please. They made me scrub a parking lot down on my knees. Then I got fired for being scared of bees, and they only gave me 50 cents an hour. Oh, Father, forgive us for what we must do. You forgive us and we'll forgive you. We'll all forgive each other till we both turn blue. Then we'll whistle and go fishing in a heaven. All fish and a whistle and a fish. Eat everything that they put on your dish. And when we get through, we'll make a big wish that we'll never have to do this again. Again. Oh, Father, forgive us for what we must do. You forgive us and we forgive you. We'll all forgive each other till we both turn blue. We'll whistle and go fishing in a heaven. Whistle and go fishing in a heaven. Whistle and go fishing in a heaven.